Okay, welcome everyone to the online public meeting for the Unalaska Airport Master Plan Update. My name is Karen McGillivray and I'm with Michael Baker International. And I'll be your moderator for this evening. We really appreciate your time and participation and are excited to discuss the Unalaska Airport Master Plan Update project with you today. I would now like to introduce Greg Lockwood, DOT Project Manager for the Unalaska Airport Master Plan Update. Greg?
Great, thanks, Karen. And thanks to you all for joining us tonight. We really appreciate your time and participation in this process. At this time, I would like to introduce the Alaska Department of Transportation and Public Facilities team, portion of this project team. And my name is Greg Lockwood, and I'm the project manager. We also have with us today Paul Cara, who is our regional aviation planner. Tyler Ribeiro is our environmental impact analyst. And Marie Heidemann is our planning chief online also. So thanks to those guys for joining us. We have basically tonight we're working on an update to the Airport Master Plan. And so what we're doing is we're exploring and documenting a plan for future aviation service and capabilities essential to your community on Alaska. We are aware of the high use of this airport, including fishing, residential travel, health service travel. And the goal that we're working on is to find the right airport configuration that will support the air carriers most effectively and allow them to service your community most effectively. So again, welcome. This is the first online open house for this project, and we're really looking forward to your comments and suggestions. So with that, I will move it over to Mark Lucan, who will take you into the project discussion and also introduce you to the rest of the team. Mark? Hey, Mark, we got you muted there, so go ahead and start over, sorry. Try again, Mark, we're still not getting you.
All right, how about that?
We got you now, thank you.
All right. Well, we'll figure it out here as we go along. But my name is Mark Lucan, and I'm Michael Baker's project manager for this Unalaska Master Plan Airport update. And like Greg, I'd like to thank you all for being here and for your participation. I'd like to introduce Michael Baker's team tonight. It includes Karen McGillivray, who you've already met. Rayanne Hebness is our deputy project manager. Phil Jeffco and Mike Thompson are our airport planners. Phil is the lead planner. Mwasi Mwamba is our civil engineer, and Pat Weitzel is helping with the environmental document. We also have Aura Landau and Nick Straka from HDR as part of our team. Well, this is certainly not the preferred method that we would have liked to meet with you all, but because of the situation we're all in, we just say thank you to each of you for your flexibility in meeting in this format, because it is vital that we get your input as we begin to review the design alternatives based on community and stakeholder and DOT input. This is what we'll be covering tonight during tonight's meeting. This is our agenda. Again, thank you for joining us. And now I'd like to introduce Phil Jeffco, our lead planner for this project.
Thank you, Mark. Well, good evening, everyone. So I'm sure many of you out there are wondering, for some of you, what a master plan is. And the master plan for Unalaska Airport is a long-term plan for the ultimate development of the project, of the airport. And we study that 20-year planning horizon, since many of the projects are demand-driven. And it must be phased over time to account for costs and potential environmental considerations. Typically, airport master plans last about a year in duration while we're preparing that, but we are on an abbreviated schedule, which I'll talk about in a moment. And these master plans are updated about every 10 years to reflect changes in activity, FAA design standards, and airport development. Now, the role of the master plan is very important. Since this master plan is an important tool used by airport management, agency stakeholders, and the local community to guide the future development of the airport. You know, the analyses and supporting documentation that we'll prepare for this study in the form of working papers, the master plan technical report, and the airport layout plan update, they'll all be used to justify future airport development projects. And most importantly, position this airport to compete for highly sought after Federal Aviation Administration grant funds. Now, the process we follow is a set of prescribed steps, systematic steps that the FAA has had us use over and over again throughout the country. And it's to guide the future development of a typical airport. And this works even for airports that are special like this one. Now, I mentioned earlier that this process is normally conducted over an 18-month period. And the Unalaska Airport Master Plan is going to be conducted over an abbreviated 10-month period. And we're doing this to assist the department in prioritizing the next set of projects here at the airport. Public outreach activities in the form of our Stakeholder Advisory Committee and public information meetings just like this one tonight will be conducted throughout the entire study to solicit community feedback through the planning process. Now, our team's already been to Unalaska early September. That was in order to get a better understanding of the existing conditions out at the airport. And this information is going to be vital to this plan and be used to complete subsequent phases of the master plan. Now, as you can see from the graphic here, the first phase, we're well into it with the inventory of existing conditions and the forecast of aviation demand. And that forecast is approved by the FAA, and it's later translated into various needs that we'll identify over that 20-year planning period. We're also including a revised runway safety area determination as part of this project, and that'll all be used to inform later phases of this process. Now, during the second phase, we're also going to evaluate various alternatives to meet those needs that we identified, including revalidating some of the recommendations from the previous planning studies that have occurred here at the airport. Feedback from the public information meetings, our meetings with the stakeholders, will be used to refine those alternatives and formulate a preferred airport development plan. Now, in the third phase, the preferred plan will be incorporated into an airport layout plan set. And it's a set of technical drawings that are also approved by the FAA, and they're used to make decisions from the agency standpoint. The development that is shown in the ALP reflects that preferred development plan for the airport, and it'll be broken down into phases according to the demand triggers that we identified during that forecast of aviation demand. Individual projects and associated cost estimates for projects that make up that preferred development plan will be incorporated into a financial feasibility study component of the master plan. Make sure that the projects that we undertake over the next 20 years are feasible and prudent. Now, working papers created throughout this planning process, as you can see here in the graphic, will eventually be consolidated into a final master plan technical report. Now, we have some major objectives that that we have identified for the study. And the Unalaska Airport Master Plan will explore and document a plan for infrastructure needed to support the future air service needs of your community. Our key objectives of the study will be to optimize that safety, efficiency, and capability of Unalaska Airport. Now, in support of that, we're also going to be looking at long-range aviation, social, and economic needs of your community. And the study is also going to ensure that current and future airport plans are environmentally compatible and consistent with your local and regional plans and objectives. The last thing that this plan will do is provide planning options that are consistent with these goals. Now, some of the key issues that we'll be looking at during the plan process, the master plan, as I mentioned before, will revalidate recommendations made during those previous planning efforts and address various changes in FAA design standards that have occurred since the last master plan. So that's going to be of key importance for us. We'll also consider the impacts proposed development that it'll have on airspace in the surrounding environment, and other issues that perhaps are identified through this public involvement process. We'll also address those as appropriate. The major focus areas for the master plan are shown here. Our initial focus, of course, will be to update the critical design aircraft that's operating here at the airport today. And the design group that's associated with this aircraft, or the family of aircraft that will be used, that operate at the airport, will be used together with our aviation forecast to determine future needs associated with the airside portion of the airport, air cargo, landside facilities, hangars, and the like. The terminal area around the passenger terminal facility, and those support facilities that involve firefighting and rescue equipment, snow removal equipment, airport maintenance facilities. We're going to take a good close look at instrument approach procedures and the impacts that those will have on the airport today and in the future. And we'll also take a look at the highest and best use of available property as we're going through this planning process. Now, as you can see from the picture here, we've got a sort of a before and after shot here. And if you look at 2010, which is on the left, that's what the airport looked like. And you can see things have changed compared to today. And that was before some of the changes from the last master plan, the recommendations were made. And as you can see in the 2018 photo, as we'll slide through the magic of the internet here, there were several improvements. And some of those changes included runway safety area improvements, the relocation of Ballyhoo Road, and a change in the runway designation. So you can see changes do occur out of this systematic process. And we're looking to make some new changes as we go through this planning. Now, I'd like to introduce Rayanne Hebnes, our airport engineer, and our deputy project manager. She'll talk a little bit about the importance of airport layout planning and the project schedule. Rayanne.
Thank you, Phil. As Phil said, the master plan is a critical tool for airport management and growth. It identifies improvements which are then included within the airport layout plan drawings in order to receive potential FAA funding. The 2008 master plan recommended 2 build-outs to achieve the preferred alternative. This graphic shown here is a result of that first build-out, which was included in the existing airport layout development. It included the improvements of the runway safety area extending out, and then also the realignment of Ballyhoo Road. The airport layout plan is one of the deliverables that requires FAA approval and is an avenue for funding airport projects. The airport layout plan includes key details about the airport layout airspace obstructions, airport data such as critical aircraft type, terminal plans, and land use and property information. Again, it is important to note, if proposed airport development is not included in this document, it will not be able to compete for FAA funding. In conjunction with the department, we have developed this schedule for the master plan update. As Phil said, the master plan process typically is accomplished over an 18-month period. However, Unalaska is accelerated to finalize the master plan update in about 10 months to allow the department to move forward with critical improvement projects, including the taxiway improvements. With that, I'll pass the mic back to Mark to talk about recent data gathering and analysis that starts off the master plan update process.
Well, thank you, Rayanne. We're developing an inventory of existing conditions to generate the baseline data about the site. The inventory includes a review of airport characteristics and local profile, airport access, transportation, parking, landside facilities, airside facilities, operational characteristics, support facilities, security and airspace, utilities and infrastructure, environmental factors. A significant activity of our inventory of existing conditions occurred on the 3 September when we traveled to Unalaska and visited your airport. Our team was comprised of Greg Lockwood, Paul Cara from Alaska DOT and PF, myself, Rayanne Hebnes, Bill Jeffco, and Mike Thompson from Michael Baker, and Nick Straka from HDR. Along with visiting the airport and the surrounding area, we also met with Mayor Tutchikov, City Manager Aaron Reinders, City Planner Bill Homka, and the Port Manager Peggy McLaughlin. We also spent considerable time with your airport manager, Dale Ruckman. Our trip, while short, was very successful and gave us some very important data. The information obtained during our visit was used to characterize existing conditions of the Unalaska airport that will form the basis of our analysis conducted during the master planning process. Phil, please jump in here and describe another piece of ongoing critical work, forecasting.
Yeah, Mark, thank you. Now, forecasting, as I alluded to earlier, is an important component of the planning process, and it'll be used to develop our future facility needs. And following that systematic process, you can't go wrong. It also serves as a realistic assessment of market conditions and market performance. The forecast is one of those two key components for the master plan approved by the FAA. The intent here is to support development of a realistic plan that's not overly optimistic. I couldn't repeat that more times. It's probably the mantra here of the study. We want to have it based in reality because there's a lot of key decisions that are made down the road off of some of this information. The forecast projects reasonable levels of demand used to establish these triggers that we'll use and that'll allow us to show when various phases of airport development should occur over that 20-year period. Now, some of the trends that we've noticed are as a result of us taking an extensive look at historical data to better understand the influences upon aviation activity at Unalaska Airport. Today, the key components that influence the Unalaska Airport forecast include operations. These are takeoffs and landings from your airport, and the movement of passengers and cargo as influenced by primarily the local population of Unalaska and the seafood processing industry. Compared to previous forecasts that we've reviewed for this airport, the resulting forecast will provide, we feel, a more realistic understanding of aviation activity in the future. Remember, these projections are used to determine future facility requirements that influence the preferred airport development plan. And Rayanne, I'm going to give it back over to you to talk a little bit about some of the key deliverables in our project.
Thank you, Phil. The final master plan is the main product that this project will produce. Our team will achieve this by producing 5 working papers. They include the inventory and the forecast, facility requirements, runway safety area practicability, an environmental overview, alternatives, and financial implementation plan. When the working papers are finalized, each will be available on the project website. The working papers up to the preliminary alternatives will take place between September, this past month, and January 2021. In January, we will present the preliminary alternatives during the second public meeting. Following that second public meeting, we will refine the alternatives to determine the recommended alternative for development to be incorporated into the financial plan and the airport layout plan. The working papers will be compiled into the draft master plan for final comments and ultimately the final master plan. Mark will start to wrap up this presentation with ways you can share your thoughts and learn more about the master plan update.
You bet, Rayanne. And so, first of all, I hope all of you have had a chance, or many of you have had a chance to find our web page on the DOT website. This is where our team keeps information updated very regularly. And it does contain valuable information about our project and our progress. Finally, the website also contains a page that allows you to comment on the project. And this will also let us know what you think about the needs of the community as it relates to this vital transportation link. Our team has This slide shows the main points of contact for this project. You've already met Greg Lockwood as the DOT MPF project manager, and I'm Michael Baker's project manager. Please feel free to reach out and speak directly to either of us whenever you feel a need to. Karen, over to you.
Thank you, Mark. DOT notes that the Unalaska Airport offers critical infrastructure used by commercial fishing, fish processors, residents, health services, and others. The right airport configuration will help support air carriers providing regular and safe air service. The department wants to hear from the community and to hear from you and those that use the airport about what should be considered in the update to the master plan. Let's go and check and see if we have any comments or calls in the chat. And I'm not seeing anything at this time. But I would like to reiterate. Oh, go ahead.
All I was going to say, Karen, is we did get a question earlier today from a caller who called in that said they weren't going to be able to participate tonight. Do you want to read that one, or would you like me to read that?
Sure, go ahead, Mark.
Well, this caller was interested, and I think many of you may be interested in when is regular service coming back to Unalaska. And I guess I can start with that for an answer. And really, you know, this plan sets up the airport for service, but ultimately, the people who make that decision about when to begin regular service are the air carriers. And so that's really, you know, who we're counting on to make that decision. Phil, do you have any other inputs to that?
I just think it really is something that comes back to the airlines as they chart forth that path to bring service back, and it'll influence a number of items such as frequency and also the type of aircraft that they'll bring into Unalaska.
Great, thank you, Phil. I wanted to make one more note here. So we have an open comment period through November 18th. And the slide, if you have your screen up, there are several ways that you can comment. Please visit our website at www.bot.alaska.gov/Unalaska. And at the website, you'll find ways to sign up, to register your email, to receive email project updates regarding the project. You'll be able to submit email comments through our comments tab. And at this time, during the comment period, you're also able to text in comments via 907-770-8973. And you can also text DUT plan to 73224. And that will also, we'll be able to receive text comments that way. If you're on the line and wishing to speak with us this evening, remember to press *3, and that will get you into the speaker queue, and we'll be happy to take your calls.
I'll just add, since we have a little bit of time, you know, when we did visit Unalaska on the 3rd of September, it was an absolutely beautiful day. It was probably one of the prettiest days that you guys had experienced in some time. But it did give us a really great opportunity to make our way around the airport, truly see the impact of the mountains that make Unalaska a challenging airport for getting in and out of. We also had a great visit with the city leadership, and we really appreciate them being willing to host us while we were there, and we did gain some great information. So we really felt like it was a very positive visit, and wish we could have returned and met with you in person for this meeting tonight.
Okay, it looks like we have a voicemail comment, so I'm going to read it out loud. It's from Dennis Robinson, and excuse me if I have any errors as this is transcribed, so I'll do my best. A question from Dennis is, have we been in contact with the major landowner, I believe it's Icicle Corporation, in regards to the Dutch Harbor Airport expansion? So I'd like to turn that question over to Paul.
Actually, I think Karin, he meant the Unalaska Corporation, and we have heard from them, and they are part of our stakeholder committee, and they have access to the working paper that we talked about, working paper 1. And we will certainly be engaging them as stakeholders during this process. But that's about as much contact as we've had with them up to this point.
And I guess it should also be noted that we've also been in touch with Icicle as well.
We have.
Mark, this Phil, it might be a good time to maybe give just a slight overview. We have a pretty significant group of stakeholders that are a cross section that are part of this process. And maybe just want to give a general idea of the types of general representation that we have of the
Sure,
group.
no, I think that's great. You know, we have engaged quite a sizable number of stakeholders that we had identified prior to beginning the project. We have included the air carriers, example being Raven, but we also have Ace Air Cargo, Grant, even a company called Alaska Seaplanes is also part of our stakeholder committee. We also have been speaking to the fish processors, both the onshore fish processors and some of the at-sea fish processors are part of our stakeholder advisory committee. Certainly, we have the community leadership are part of that, and as we already mentioned, Unalaska Corporation is part of that stakeholder committee. And we have other agencies, government agencies like the FAA, the U.S. Coast Guard, obviously the state of Alaska, DOT and PF are part of the stakeholder committee, and then U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and the Army Corps of Engineers are also government agencies that are part of our stakeholder committee. And then finally, Swansea is also been included. So Shirley Marquardt is representing them, and many of you know her. And so we have a great group of stakeholders who all care very much about the airport, the ability for that airport to serve the community, and so we're getting some great insight from that committee.
Great, Mark. Thank you so much. So we do have some callers on the line. Our phone caller moderator, Nikki, is going to tap them and let them in.
Well, how's everyone doing? Hopefully you can hear me.
Yes, we can. Thanks for calling in.
My name's Tom Bell. I'm a resident of Unalaska. I also serve on the City Council of Unalaska. And I also have a permit for use of one of the revetments there at the airport. Just let me start with a quick question here. I was noticing in the timeline here that part of the initial timeline is identifying a critical aircraft. Do we have a critical aircraft identified already, or still in the process of that?
Bill, why don't you go ahead and take that one?
Well, that's a great question, Tom, and thanks for calling in. Currently, before we went into this study, the critical aircraft was designated as the Saab 2000. And one of our items that we're charged to do as part of this update of the master plan is to revisit the critical aircraft, and we are in the process of doing that right now as part of the forecast. And so we expect to unveil that over the next month here because we will be using that information to drive the rest of the study. But that is a big part of it, is to revisit and either revalidate or look at the most recent information to show what that will be. And it's not just what we have here currently that's important, but also what we estimate it would be over that 20-year period in the future, so that we can tie future development activity to it as well.
So I think what Phil's saying is that we are working on that. And as Rayanne mentioned, the working paper, once it's finalized, will be published and posted on the website, so that then it will be available for the public to view.
Thank you. Unalaska is, the #1 fishing port in the country. We support, numerous fish processing plants who employ thousands of workers. We have full-time population of over 4,000. Air travel out here is a critical critical infrastructure to this community, not only for commerce, but for medical care, medevacs, a whole host of other uses. The city has recently moving forward with a geothermal power, which has the potential to attract more business and diversify this economy and increase the demand for air travel out here. The last time we did the master plan, the critical aircraft that was identified was a Saab 340, even though the forecasts were showing increase in air travel, and we got stuck on that aircraft as the critical aircraft. I just want to make sure that, that looking forward here, that we take into account, and hopefully the numbers would show that there's the potential and the need for a larger aircraft, whether it be the Saab 2000s, a Q400, or even a regional jet or a 737 as potential aircraft coming in here. That hopefully that doesn't get lost in there. But let me switch gears because I have another concern, and in the whole master plan process is general aviation. The last time we did the master plan, general aviation was not even thought of. Matter of fact, there was laughs that, why would anyone want a small plane out here? But there is a demand for general aviation out here, especially if we get a lot of growth in some of these other areas. You could see the demand for helicopters operating out of here, small Part 135 operations, not to mention just private ownership. Me, myself, over the last few years, I've had several people approach me about, hey, where can I put a plane out there? I want to bring a plane out there, but there's just no place to put anything. And in my mind, one of the critical parts of having a small aircraft out here is having some place to put it. And right now, there's no real place identified on this airport where we could expand general aviation and put a permanent structure. The revetments right now are limited to a temporary structure, short-term permits, and I think there needs to be some thought about growth of general aviation. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. We really appreciate the call and your participation. We have actually 2 other calls on the line. Nikki, if you could go ahead and let them in, one at a time.
Hi, my name is Dennis Robinson. Again, question, you've identified the Saab 2000 as the critical aircraft for out here. I think it's important that the individual or the old company that brought that to the United States, the first ones to have it, Danny Siebert basically he knows an awful lot about that plane and what it can and cannot do. I think it would behoove the state to have him as a part of the team to consult on this. It's just my thoughts. I mean, have you given any thought to it?
Well, Dennis, thank you for the call. And just to clarify, the Saab 2000 has not necessarily been identified as a critical aircraft for this particular master plan update. And we do understand that, Mr. Siebert did bring that aircraft into Alaska, and certainly, if we feel that that's if that ends up being an aircraft that is identified again as a critical aircraft, then we would certainly engage him. But At this point, again, it's premature to say exactly what the critical aircraft is.
Right. Well, thank you. Well, we have one here in the revetment for you if you ever get to that far.
Yeah, we saw it.
Thank you so much, Dennis. Okay, we have another caller on the line, Nikki.
Hello.
Hello.
This is Clint Hewling.
Hi, Clint. Go ahead. We can hear you fine.
Okay, thanks. I am one of the general aviation pilots who lives here in Unalaska, and one of the things that has been a problem for general aviation is just the lack of support or even acknowledgement of general aviation here in Unalaska. And I just want to reiterate what Tom said, that there is a need for support for general aviation here. There's actually two of us that have had planes out here on a continual basis since 2012. And I know there's many others who would love to have a general aviation aircraft out here if there was the support for it. And one of the needs for it is a place that we can put permanent hangars. Right now, they keep telling us when you have a revetment, they tell us you can only put temporary structures there. Well, that makes it a little difficult for people to spend time and money putting up a structure if they don't really know how long it's going to be able to be there. It's really difficult to make a plan on a personal level, or if somebody wants to start a 135 operation, there's really not any support for it. So I guess that's where I'm at right now. I don't want to see general aviation overlooked here again. It's difficult enough as it is. We need to be able to expand general aviation for the community, for small-time charter operators, for people that want to do charter flights or sightseeing, helicopter operations. It's possible that there would be operations for charter fishing, or, it's unlimited what could be done if they just support the general aviation fleet here. So that's all I had. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Paul, any comments to that one?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. So this interest in general aviation is new to me because I'm showing that there's 5 based aircraft there that's it. 5 based aircraft and an ultralight, and there's about 50 itinerant general aviation aircraft. So if I'm not mistaken, what I'm hearing is that because we don't have any facilities for them, there's no airplanes here. But if we had the room, the hangar space, and that type of thing, there'd be more general aviation, and it's needed for all the other operations that are going on, fishing and that type of thing. Is that what I'm hearing?
I believe he's hung up the phone after he said.
Okay. So, I guess I'll take it back to Mark or Phil. Are we looking at? Have we generally, master plans don't always look at general aviation forecasts or anything like that. Are we looking at that in this one, or is there some way we can move that in?
Yeah, we definitely could look at that. There's general aviation type aircraft that are operating there, but once again, what's driving the based facilities like that are your based aircraft. The challenge when you got 5 aircraft, let's say, at the airport based, and there's a balance that has to be made here as we move forward. We'll definitely take this back and look a little bit closer. Maybe what we do is make some incremental steps towards trying to provide some level of aircraft storage facilities that could at least support some of this to the best of the ability of the airport. There are some currently, as was pointed out by more than one caller, some of the restrictions that we have associated with the revetments, as an example. And we'll have to look at that as we're coming up with facility needs and ultimately some alternatives and how we could meet those. So it's definitely something to consider in the master plan. Any thoughts, Mark?
No, I don't have anything to add, Phil. Thanks. But, you know, I know general aviation is addressed in the forecast, and, you know, based on the comments tonight, we'll at least go back and look and review what we've written so far.
One thing, if we ever were to grow this airport to include general aviation, the FAA needs justification for any kind of spending we're going to do with their money. And so written comments from the general aviation community is very helpful.
That's a great point,
Great.
Paul.
Thank you, Paul. Okay, so we at this time have 3 callers in the queue. And just a reminder to the other callers online, if you would like to speak, go ahead and press *3, and that will get you into the speaker queue. Nikki, we are ready for the next caller. Thank you.
I'm sorry, the phone was speaking over what the conversation was there. This is Tom Bell again, and I just reiterate what I said about general aviation before. You know, there was no thought put to it last time on the master plan, and that whole north side of the runway, you know, excluding the DOT building and all that, has room for planning some type of general aviation use. You know, if there was some kind of realignment of the runway or some added runway or some other, you know, large project that went along with the runway, I just don't want to see that general aviation gets left out of the planning process. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. We appreciate your call. Nikki, we have another caller.
Hi, this is Chris Saltz. I'm the CEO of the Unalaska Corporation, and I just wanted to thank you for allowing us to join in the group. We are the major landowner. We own land adjacent to the airport. We're also a tenant of the DOT with our World War II Visitors Center. So we do, as well as members of the community. So it's great to be part of the Stakeholders group. We look forward to working with everybody, and I wanted to just express my agreement and support for both Dennis and Tom and their comments about aviation matters, from the small guy up to the planning to the future for growth. We do have a geothermal project that will expand our ability to create power well beyond what is currently produced. And, you know, we're looking forward to that being a major boost to diversifying and growing our economy. So anything we can do to help to facilitate and increase transportation, air transportation, and different kinds of airplanes, we're ready to go to the table. And thank you once again for including us.
Thanks so much, Chris. We appreciate the call. And I believe we have one more caller on the line.
Yes, this is Clint Hewling calling back again. I just wanted to make a couple quick comments on that general aviation, things that would help support it. on the north side of the runway, as Tom mentioned, there is a great deal of space that could be improved for general aviation. A lot of you probably aren't aware, but one of our LifeMed flight planes was actually damaged in the big windstorm that we had back in August. And it was damaged because there's no hangars for it to be put in. And so they had to bring mechanics out to repair their plane. I know that there are other businesses that would love to have aircraft out here, but it's got to be feasible for them. And even for companies like LifeMed, they're not going to stick a multi-million-dollar plane in a hangar that's 3/4 of the way down a gravel taxiway / road, whatever they want to call it. They don't call it a taxiway anymore, and it's not maintained properly. So they don't even want to keep their plane down there because there's too much risk of it getting damaged from taxiing back and forth to the runway. So those are the sorts of things that need to be addressed. They should also consider, in my opinion, bringing a fire hydrant to the far end of the runway for CFR trucks. And in the process of that, they could develop their location for the general aviation aircraft. Thank you.
Ben, thank you for that input.
So we have a text comment that came in asking, what is the age of these aircraft? I guess I'm going to assume it's the aircraft that would be coming in to provide service. Mark?
Yeah, I think maybe, I don't know for sure, but they may be asking about the aircraft that we've been talking about, the general aircraft that are there they're based at the aircraft. So they have to check with the owners on that. If they're talking about the carrier aircraft, again, we don't necessarily have any information, at least not tonight, on the age of those aircraft. And again, they probably need to check in with the carriers to get that kind of detailed information.
Thank you, Mark. We have another text question that came in, and that is, what aircraft are capable of landing in Dutch, and what is their capacity?
Well, I'm gonna definitely turn that one over to Phil or Mike Thompson, because both of them have worked on the forecast and can maybe at least give a general overview of what we're looking at for potential aircraft operations there.
I would like to put that over to Mike, only because he's been looking at that most recently as part of the critical aircraft analysis. I don't want to put you on the spot, Mike, but I know you may have a little bit more to offer than I can at the moment.
Glad to answer that, Phil, as best we can at this time. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Okay. One of the challenges we have at Dutch is the fact that we've got a finite amount of land in which to develop a runway. It was mentioned earlier that since the last master plan, the runway has been extended from 4,100 feet to 4,500 feet, while at the same time improving the safety area at each end. And as you well know, there's some special operating conditions with the blockage of road traffic as aircraft take off and land. This is very unique. To that end, the best way to answer your question is to say that any aircraft that chooses to operate at Dutch will do so in a safe manner They're certificated to do that. Pilots are licensed to avail themselves to all the information possible, and they will not operate on a runway that is too short. We know that because a variety of aircraft have served Dutch in the past with varying degrees of success. And I'm mainly talking about air carrier aircraft or even Part 135 aircraft that are of larger size. This master plan will look at the available runway length, and as part of the identification of the critical aircraft that people bring to us, and I think that's been mentioned earlier, there's a natural market feature that says if an air carrier can make money, they'll operate at Dutch, and they'll operate in such a way that they make profit. So the critical aircraft that we're looking at is a family of aircraft that probably have between 35 and 50 seats. In fact, our forecast efforts make that assumption. That we do that without identifying a specific aircraft because, quite frankly, there's a hole in the market at Dutch, as you well know. What we want to make sure is that our recommendations for runway improvements focus on the safety elements at each end to make sure that we fully comply to the greatest extent practicable with FAA design standards, while also providing the greatest platform on which one of these airliners can work. So as part of the master plan, we will look at a group of aircraft, identify what their physical takeoff lengths are during the hottest day conditions, which are favorable for most aircraft that work at Dutch. But we have one other consideration, and that's airspace. So just because they can operate on a 4,500-foot runway does not necessarily mean they own the airspace with respect to relief and mountains. So we'll work closely with the operators that participate as stakeholders. We'll use whatever information we can regarding aircraft performance. And as part of the recommendations to the city and to the FDOT, or excuse me, the Alaska DOT, we will come up with a variety of alternative measures to identify the best aircraft that will likely work at that airport. And maybe by the end of this master plan, that answer will be more definitive. Hopefully that'll answer the question.
Well, I hope
Thank
you'll
you,
all
Mike.
appreciate, I just wanted to say, Colin, thank you. I hope you'll all appreciate why we are so thankful that we have Mike Thompson on our team. He just really brings a wealth of knowledge and experience and is going to be working to the best of his ability to provide just a really fantastic, accurate forecast. And I think you'll have heard his expertise. Karin, you want to go ahead and read the next text question? Because I think, again, it's one that Mike would be best suited to answer.
Yeah, and this participant had text back just to clarify on the first text we had regarding the age of the aircraft. So they're wanting to know what currently manufactured commercial passenger aircraft are capable of operations in and out of Dutch. And if we're going to limit the vision to small 30-year-old aircraft, we will limit our potential expansion. The airport has been and continues to be a choke point for the growth of the community. Mike?
Well, I'll answer that as best I can. It's interesting in the fact that we have commuter aircraft or larger airliners that are 30 and 40 years old. Now, obviously, the larger airlines tend to modernize their fleet for a number of reasons, usually cost and the amenities that go with it. But that's not to say that the newest aircraft would be the only ones that we want to look at. There's a growing evolution of aircraft that are coming into the market that have increased capabilities. We know that the Saab 2000, for example, fit a market and did reasonably well. The Saab 340 did for a while, and it may remain in the mix, not necessarily be the predominant one. So although the master plan will be looking at this facility, we don't have a crystal ball on that, but we think that through the normal aviation commercial market, that operators that choose to enter service at Dutch will do so with aircraft that fit their needs as far as their operating business line or their business concern. But at the same time, they'll recognize that there is a need for an increased passenger load with some type of a balance. They're not going to operate an aircraft that they have to operate half empty because they don't have enough runway. That's just a gross example of how the economic sides go. Conversely, if it's too small and too many trips or they can't satisfy demand, that aircraft won't fit either. I would say that as part of the family of aircraft that we're looking at, it's going to represent a fairly modern fleet. We also keep our eye out of airports like Dutch with limited runway lengths, 45, 5,000, 6,000, to see what other airliners are working at those airports. I must caution to say that the master plan's role is not to do that, not to do a market study or try to attract airlines. That's a natural function, and that's probably a discussion between the state and the city as operators offer to work there. But be assured that I think at the end of this master plan report, you'll see that we've looked under every rock we could to make sure that we've satisfied questions like that, to say what aircraft can operate efficiently at this airport, what airplanes will probably come into a normal business cycle, and how those different airplanes might possibly work as far as runway takeoff lengths, the number of passengers. We look very carefully at load factors. And we have a lot of historical information to say that we know that at Dutch, the load factors run between 60 and 70%, which is relatively high for this type of airport. We also know those air carriers try to use the same payload space for cargo and mail. So there's an interesting mix of considerations at this airport. So even though we can't give you an answer tonight on the age, I would say that any aircraft that operates there will be one that's airworthy, something that will stay in the fleet for some time, for if only for selfishly the economic needs of that operator, but also to fulfill the needs of the city to make sure that they have enough airlift capacity to get their passengers in and out. And this is really a sticky wicket at Dutch, and we recognize that. So as master plans go, not only are we looking at facilities, we're looking at what facilities would best suit Dutch, and that includes the runway.
You, Mike. We have two more texts from the same participants, so I'll just go ahead and read those off. In regards to the DUT plan, how can you determine the potential future passenger demands when historically the lack of seat capacity has turned away many passengers? And can you quantify what demand would be assuming seats were available? And are we going to base our future plan on 30-year-old aircraft?
I guess that comes back to me.
I was going to say that, Mike, you've answered a good portion of that already, but you can try to wrap it up on this particular topic.
Yeah, let's see if we can put a nail in it. We have the trend analysis of what has historically come and gone out of Dutch, and we know that there are some unique situations dealing with the seafood processing. But not just that, we have the natural residents, the full-time residents, so we have some leisure travel, obviously. Our forecast will be reviewed and approved by the FAA based on some of the assumptions that we put forward. And Phil mentioned it earlier. Even though we recognize that Dutch is unique, it's our job in the master plan to make sure that we fully appreciate what your demand is, what it potentially could be, what latent demand might be out there that's unsatisfied, and then work with the FAA and the DOT to make sure that we come up with a forecast that's reasonable and does not overreach or tend to project operations that simply may not occur. And even though we don't have a crystal ball, we do the best we can. I think one of the most important things is the list of stakeholders that Mark mentioned earlier. you'll have your opportunity, and the community will have an opportunity to vet and review the forecast. And perhaps when you do that, you'll have some additional comments or questions. But at the end of the day, it'll be your forecast. It'll be Dutch's forecast. The state will review it, and the FAA will approve it with state cooperation. So that's where we're going. And perhaps tonight we don't have all the answers for you, but by the end of this process, I feel that we certainly will, based on your participation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. So we still have several callers on the line. I just wanted to give you a friendly reminder. If you press *3, you'll be filtered into the speaker queue if you'd like to speak with a member of the project team, whether it's questions, comments, or concerns. Every address actually in Unalaska should have received a postcard about this project and the comment period, which again is October 21st today through November 18th. And there's several ways that you can provide comment on the project. You can do it at our website, www.dot.alaska.gov/Unalaska. There's an email option as well, dutplan@publicinput.com. You can call or text your comments to DUT-PLAN 73, text DUT-PLAN to 73224. At our website, you have an option to sign up for email project updates. And it looks like we have another text comment coming in. And this is a follow-up to the question about when regular service will return to Unalaska. Unalaska is deemed an essential air service community, a program run by DOT. This summer, there was a request for proposals and 2 companies expressed interest. EAS is a program that could bring commercial air service back sooner because they can be federally subsidized. What is the status of the EAS RFP for Unalaska, and is there a timeline for making a decision on whether the submitted proposals are acceptable? Greg, I'll turn that to you.
I'm going to see if Paul has a good answer for that. Paul, is that something that you're comfortable with?
Well, I tell you, I don't know too much about that. I'm going to take a quick look in my files and see if there's an RFP already out for this. Give me a second on that. Okay, so there was an RFP put out in June. Proposals had to be in by July 20th. I guess I'm going to have to, let's see, I don't think I have an award announcement. Let me take a quick look at that. I don't. So I think the best thing would be to have that person asking the question get some contact information. I can get back to that person and find out. I'll follow up on the status of that. In fact, maybe go to the next question. I'll look on the FAA's website. Maybe I'll find something. But in the meantime, let's get that person's name or where I can get back to that person.
Paul,
Okay,
would
great.
it be also important? I just wanted to mention, would it be important also to mention that this is a U.S. DOT decision? It's not a decision at the state level, but U.S. DOT is actually the adjudicating body that makes a decision on EAS.
Yes, that is important. The state doesn't make the decision, the DOT does, and then they usually send out an announcement saying who got the contract.
Great, thank you. Paul, we do have that person's contact information so we can provide a response. Looks like they text back saying the RFP closed at the end of August, so we'll definitely follow up with that information.
Okay. If I find the information before the end of this meeting, I'll chime in.
Great, thank you. Okay, so if you're just joining us, we're talking about the master plan that will set out the possibilities for how the Unalaska Airport might change over the next 20 years. Mark, I'm going to turn it over to you and just ask you to summarize some key points regarding the project.
Sure. Yeah, so I guess the first key point is this project started in late August of this year. We've been out to Unalaska to do a site visit, and that has led to at least a draft of our first working paper, which deals with the inventory of the existing conditions, as well as a forecast of future aviation activity and demand at Dutch Harbor. The project is slated to run for about 10 months. So we should be wrapping up our effort in the late spring of next year. But included in that, in the final documents, will be the forecast, which is approved by the FAA, as well as the airport layout plan, which will include the preferred and recommended alternatives that we come up with from this study. And then finally, a technical report that will be the culmination and of all of the working papers that we put together, which will include alternatives, includes a financial plan, and some recommended projects. So that's kind of the high points of the master plan, and we are excited to be doing this for the community of Dutch Harbor.
Thank you, Mark. We have a text comment that came in, question rather. Would improvements of local weather reporting infrastructure be within the scope of this plan? Phil or Paul, would you like to tackle that one?
Short answer is yes. We do look at all support facilities associated with the airport operation to one degree or another. You have reporting equipment, but as we found out even during our visit, weather conditions can be different at various locations on the airport, believe it or not. So we do have a weather observation contingent there, as well as automated equipment located on the airport. And what will be key as we look into the future of the airport itself and the development is to maintain or improve upon that capability as we improve upon and expand the airport, if that is what's necessary. When you start lengthening and widening parts and pieces of the airport, it may mean that you have to find a new location for a piece of equipment sometimes. So it's good to know how important this is, as we discovered numerous master plans around the country, how important this is, especially here at this facility. And we'll be keeping that in mind as we move forward, as well as, like we mentioned earlier, the airspace considerations.
Thank you, Phil.
You're welcome.
I just wanted to remind the callers on the line, if you'd like to speak, go ahead and press *3 to be entered into the speaker queue. We'd love to hear from you. Again, you can comment. We're accepting comments on this public open house. The comment period is today, October 21st through November 18th. And you can visit our website at www.dot.alaska.gov/Unalaska. There's a place on the website to sign up for email updates regarding the project. There is a link to frequently asked questions regarding the project and a place to also submit comments regarding the project. We as the project team are encouraging everyone to comment and participate. We want to hear from you. We want to hear your thoughts and ideas and suggestions. And again, the comment period is open through November 18th, 2020. Phil, during this time that we're having a little break from incoming comments, do you want to talk about the work papers, what they are and why they're important and how they roll up into the master plan as a whole?
Really, no problem. Our working papers, we divided into these smaller set of deliverables over the course of the master plan so that we could focus on those elements and not get distracted, really determine what some of the needs are as it relates to different deliverables. That first one that we're working with right now is basically a snapshot in time of what it's currently like out there at the airport, and that forecast of future activity. Our next working paper that we're currently working on right now is that looking at demand capacity and facility requirements for the facility, and that's your needs. What do we need here now, 5 years from now, 10 years, 20 years from now? We look at those triggers, those milestones, and we break projects out into milestones as such because the cost of some of the improvements could be substantial. And to position the airport to compete for grant funding to help support those projects is important. So the airport with the master plan in place is usually going to be in a great place to compete for some of those funds because they've got all their ducks in a row, so to speak. That next working paper, the third one in the process, is to really look at alternatives to try to meet those needs to the best of the airport's ability. It may be possible to do so much. And there were some pretty decent ideas actually in the last master plan that haven't come to fruition yet, maybe because they haven't reached some of those thresholds of demand and so on. So that's why we're going back to revalidate to see if they still make sense. And a number of things have changed in the industry and in terms of design standards from the FAA, so that it's important for us to take that that fresh look at things. We'll refine those alternatives. I was going to mention it before, but this is a good time to say it. Right now, we're having a meeting with the community here to give you an overview of what the plan's all about, so that you can kind of get thinking about, well, what would I do here? What could we do here? What would be helpful to our community? Start thinking along those lines. Not necessarily to have all the answers right away, but when we get into that meeting in January, it's going to be critical to have everybody on board. You've got your notification now, but that's when we really want to hear from you as we start presenting some different ideas and the pros and the cons associated with some of those ideas. We're going to want to be able to bounce them off and some of those ideas off against the community and have an open and transparent dialogue. That's so important to the success of one of these studies. And then, one of our final working papers will be to take that preferred development plan and convert it into a capital improvement program, a list of projects that are phased over that 20-year time frame. We don't do them all at once. There are a number of steps that need to take place. Sometimes benefit cost analyses, environmental studies. There are a number of hoops to go through when you're trying to build things at an airport, large infrastructure projects like this. So definitely something to look forward to. It's a great roadmap for DOT and stakeholders to follow for the future. And, you know, we really like doing the job that we do here and helping the airports develop and succeed at developing in the future to meet that future demand. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. And
great. We have a caller, Phil, so we're going to go ahead. I appreciate you running down through the working papers for us. Nikki, if you'll let the caller on the line.
Hey, good evening. My name's Andy Dietrich. I live here in Unalaska, and just had one question for the group and then a few comments.
Go ahead, Andy. We can hear you fine. Thank you.
Great. Thanks for the meeting and the time. I'm actually on the Stakeholder Advisory Group, and I've enjoyed the callers and comments this evening and wanted to engage with the group while we had a captive audience. And the first one, just looking for maybe a few more comments, and I appreciate the effort you all have done with your explanations on some of these questions tonight. And it seems a little bit of a cat and mouse game with your forecasted aviation and what would be possible. And I've been reading, you know, some of these drafts as part of the stakeholder group and still trying to wrap my head around it and what the FAA would be okay with forecast-wise with regard to, yes, you have a lot of this data and this forecast right now is fairly flat, but where can you get in this concept of if we make the airport longer, for instance, and I know there's other terrain factors, but what kind of leeway does this group have with regard to, hey, if we do certain improvements, certain aircraft, larger aircraft are going to come, and to get the FAA to approve that? Because I'm hearing that from a lot of the community members that have called in. That's a choke point. If this 20-year plan, if we get done and this forecast is flat and you recommend XYZ on a runway extension, but it's not realistic with the potential growth that would happen in combination with potential economic growth, whether it's a geothermal venture, whether it's a potential military activity. We just had a big study done from the Army that came out here that was looking at different things of that nature. This is a 20-year plan. It's a long time. It sure would be a shame if you guys can't use that in your forecasting, and I was just hoping to hear, just try to dig into that a little bit more while we're talking about it tonight. And because there will be more and bigger aircraft that would arrive here, I can guarantee it, if we had the longer runway. I think it would, I would disagree if somebody comes to a different assessment. And I was just hoping to get some more comments on that, and then I had a few other comments after, but I'll listen in for a sec.
Paul, did you want to take that one on?
Sure. Okay. There isn't a whole lot of answers other than essentially the way the FAA is the one that basically has all the money that helps pay for this stuff. One thing they don't do is build it and they will come. So we can't just build it and say, oh, well, we know that bigger airplanes are going to come. We just have to build it. And these Michael Baker International, when they do their forecast as per, they go off past historical data. For them to actually use future data, there actually has to be an airline to come forward and say, we want to come here and we want to do this, provided we have this runway meets these specifications, and we're going to bring these airplanes in. We've already figured out how much money we're going to make. No airline's done that yet. No airlines come along. And it's mentioned before, this master plan is not a marketing or something for the route planners. That might be something the city would have to take on, is to put on an RFP and hire some professional route planners so they can figure out what kind of airlines they can attract, and they'd have to go to different airlines and show them how those airlines could make money coming to this airport. And if an airline's interested and they're saying, well, yes, we can do that, we need this kind of infrastructure to do it, then we have something to take to the FAA for justification. It still won't negate the challenge of building a longer runway in Unalaska simply because of the terrain. That still remains a problem, but at least then we'd have some kind of a forecast that would show that if we built it, we would have an airline coming to use it. Does that make sense?
It does, and I understand it's a tough question. And as long, I think, as the group understands that, like, I almost used the phrase "build it and they will come," but it's a tough one for all the community members. If the FAA doesn't take that, then you can understand we're left with this question. Well, if you're going to look at runway length and airfield design, which is one of the following areas of emphasis indicated by this master plan update, if your design aircraft is the same that's been coming in here, then, at this point, up until these crashes, safe aviation occurred here for decades and decades and decades. And so it seems like this group, I'm hoping that a likely improvement is going to be some kind of runway length, and I'm looking forward to the results. If you're going to use the same design aircraft that have been, and the fact that we've been doing aviation with these similar size for all these years, then how would this group come out with a recommendation to increase runway length if you're not going to, use larger design aircraft? I guess that's sort of, that seems like the best way to justify it in one way. So anyway, I won't belabor it, but I appreciate the feedback on that. But sometimes these processes, I'd hate to get through this 10 months of this accelerated process and not make forward process for future growth, on this. But I appreciate the back and forth on that. And I hope this group understands that. The only other comments I had, what I heard from some of the previous callers regarding the revetments, it sounds like, the opportunity, if somebody had like a longer lease, if there was space on this airport and on the airfield there and around the airfield for longer leases where somebody could get a 20 or a 30 or a 50 year, that might be the case now. I'm not super familiar with it, but something where they could have some commitment there and to be willing to invest some money in, I think would be a good thing. And the last one that I hope to see, and I also put this comment to the stakeholder group, if you don't account for unmanned cargo aircraft coming here sometime in the next 20 years, then I think your forecast is going to be incorrect. I think we're within 5 years of this being tested. The St. Paul tribe has invested $40 million in a partnership with a group that's getting ready they've already had prototypes and they're getting ready to launch. I think unmanned air cargo in the state of Alaska will be occurring inside of the next 20 years and probably the next 10 years. And you 100% need to include that in this plan, in my opinion. And thanks a lot for your time tonight. Thanks for having the conversation with us. Appreciate it.
Andy, as a final comment, essentially, put it in a nutshell, the FAA is saying, okay, build it and they will come, show us that they will come, provide us justification that they'll come. And this master plan can only go so far in that. That would require a separate study that the city of Dutch Harbor could take on. And perhaps we could take it on in partnership or something like that. But I like your comment on the unmanned aircraft because I agree with you. I think that's probably coming.
Andy, this is Phil. One thing about the unmanned aircraft is it's still in its infancy. We are seeing strides in I guess we'll say the right direction. I do also believe it's going to happen. Remember what I mentioned earlier in our presentation? Every 10 years, sometimes a little less, these master plans get updated, and it's precisely for that reason. Things change, technology changes, and if these come on the scene sooner than we anticipate, or we don't really have a good line of sight on them right now to the degree that they would be operating and how they would even operate and where they would operate, that's why you also take a look at an update to a master plan, or even if a study down the road where you look at part of the master plan and updated part of it. That's also allowable down the road. So, don't lose sight of that. If we don't have enough information to really make some concrete recommendations for that, by the end of the 10-month period, don't lose hope. I think that it would make sense through your participation in the committee to at least get that memorialized in the study, so we don't lose sight of it, and keep that out there in front of us.
Yeah, that's great. Appreciate it. Thanks a lot for the reply on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Andy. We appreciate the call. We have a couple of texts that have come in. I'm going to read the first one. Do you have a preliminary expansion drawing that we can look at? Rayanne, I'll direct that to you.
Gotta unmute everything quick. I think the best place to go right now for a future expansion is probably the 2008 master plan, which is available on the project website. It will also be our jumping off point for any alternatives we're looking at. Yeah, if you have recommendations from that, please feel free to let us know, and we will incorporate them as necessary and as prudent. Thank you.
Thanks, Rayanne. We have another text that came in. Will there be another opportunity for public input further along in the process? I would answer yes, but Mark, I'll turn that over to you.
Well, thanks, Karen. Yeah, you're absolutely right. There will be another public information meeting, very much like tonight's meeting, probably a very similar format. And the plan right now is that will occur in January. And correct me if I'm not getting the date exactly right, but I think it's the 21st of January. Yes. And what's exciting about that public information meeting, the second one, is that we'll have already developed the alternatives that we are looking at for this master plan update, and we'll be presenting that to the community as part of that master plan, or as part of that public information meeting. So you will have by that time some updated drawings and updated possibly renderings even that we can share with you in the presentation. So put that on your calendar and be prepared to participate just like you are tonight, because it's been a great opportunity to speak with you all and to answer your questions.
Thank you, Mark. We have another text that has come in, so I'll read this one. Apparently, no one can make money here, so what are we doing? If we're not going to build it to fit widely used aircraft, we are wasting our time. I believe this is more planning orientated. Paul, would you like to comment on that?
Well, I could say that, yeah, they're going to, that's part of what the forecast is doing, is trying to find what airplanes are going to come. As far as they're looking at the widely used aircraft that are coming, and that's part of the forecast. And part of another thing that they're going to look at is future needs of the airport and what it takes to expand the runway. That was already charted in the 2008 master plan and prior, and so it probably hasn't changed much. Is that they're just the cost to increase that runway length is often cost prohibitive. The study is going to look at that. They're going to look at alternatives, going to see what they can do. But that's kind of where we're at with that airport. That airport has pretty much already taken in widely used aircraft. So widely used aircraft, I'm not sure what they mean by that. Do we mean the aircraft here in Alaska, or do we mean A320s? That'd be a pretty tall order to bring something that size into that airport.
Thank you, Paul. I just wanted to give a quick reminder to everybody on the line. This meeting goes until 7:30 this evening. If you would like to speak, just press *3 on your phone and you'll be filtered through into the speaker queue. We'd love to hear from you. I'd also like to mention that the 2008 master plan document is uploaded to our website under the project library tab. So again, you can find that document at www.dot.alaska.gov/Unalaska. Again, other ways to comment this evening and through the comment period of November 18th. You can text your comment in, text DUT plan to 73224. There's a text telephone option, which is 907-770-8973. And again, visit our website, sign up for email notifications regarding project updates, and submit comments that way. There's a comments tab. There's also a frequently asked questions tab where you may find some useful information regarding the project. But we would love to hear from you. So if you're on the line and would like to speak, go ahead and press *3 and that'll get you into the speaker queue. Mr. Lucan, while we have a short lull in some comments, would you like to summarize again what a master plan is?
Sure. And the one thing I've neglected to say, but I think we've mentioned it a couple of times, is that this is a systematic process that's kind of prescribed by the FAA to look at the airport and its not just the runway itself, but also the support facilities, as well as the other facilities, both on the air side, which would be hangars and that type of thing, to the land side, which are the terminal and the parking areas. So we're looking at a fairly comprehensive view of the airport that serves the community of Unalaska. It is looking forward, and that's the idea behind the plan. Is it looks forward for up to 20 years as to what are the needs of the community for transportation via this airport, and it looks at a lot of different aspects of of those needs, whether it's socioeconomic, business needs. We know that there's a very significant fish processing industry there. Somebody already mentioned, I think it was Mr. Bell that mentioned, Unalaska is the #1 fishing port in the United States. And so there is a very strong industry in Unalaska that does require aviation as a means of transportation. And so that is what the master plan does, is it looks at all these factors that influence the need for air transportation. And, one of the things that I do know about Alaska is, we have a vast majority of our communities that are dependent upon aviation as their primary means of transportation. And so, we are going to take a really hard look at all these factors that we've talked about tonight, as well as the other factors that are prescribed in the FAA process to define, #1, what currently exists at Unalaska and the airport and the facilities there, and then look at the past usage of that airport by the many users, both commercial and private, to inform what we believe is going to be the future demand of aviation activity, and what culminates in a forecast that will be approved by the FAA. And I think it's really important to just to note that ultimately it is the FAA who has the final say on the forecast for this airport or for any master plan. They do, take input certainly from the information that we have accumulated and analyzed and then crafted. They also take input from Alaska DOT and PF. And those two agencies, in consultation, will ultimately define that forecast. And then from that forecast, we look at what are really the needs of the community and of the airport, and that will be crafted in the next working paper that Phil already described, which we will provide that draft at the end of this month for the stakeholders to review, for the FAA to review, for DOT to review, and then from there we'll step into looking at the alternatives that seem to be make the most sense based on the forecast, based on the needs and based on the inventory that we've already completed. And so that's a good chunk of the master planning process that will eventually drive to the airport layout plan update, and then finally our final technical review and technical report that will be the culmination of all the working papers that we put together. We are also looking at the environment and the impact of the environment, the impacts to the environment that these alternatives might have, and so that is certainly something that's currently underway and will be part of our report. And then finally, we will look at the economic aspects of these projects. So with that, I'll turn it back to you, Karen.
Thanks so much, Mark. We have a text that has come in. Are arresting beds a consideration for overrun areas? Bill?
Bill, would you like to take that one?
Sure. And as a matter of fact, it is something that we'll be considering. The engineered material of the EMAS system that is used at some airports for this purpose is going to be considered as one of the alternatives in this study. So stay tuned for that to see if it gives us any sort of measured improvement to the facility, not only just to meet the standards, but maybe there's a combination of using that system and some level of expansion to get the most out of the facility as we can. So that's one thing that we'll be looking at, and our partner at HDR will be specifically looking at that component.
Thank you, Phil.
You're welcome.
We have another caller on the line. Nikki, go ahead and punch him through.
Hi, say Dennis Robinson again, Vice Mayor, City of Unalaska. We are currently have the plans going for a dredging out of our channel, the main channel coming into the harbor, and I think you mentioned the economic terms that have been excessive in the past for extending this runway. Is one thing that we can do with that material that's dredged is actually shallow up that the area on the north end of that runway, so where we can where it may lessen the economic impact of extending that out as an alternative or something to look at anyway. Yeah, thanks.
Dennis, how far are you from that project?
It's in the Corps of Engineers' hands. I believe we are looking at 2022 for that project to be starting.
Good to know. Thank you.
Sure.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that, Dennis.
Yeah, thanks for doing what you guys are doing. It's really appreciated in this community. As we stated earlier, it is a choke point, and we'd like to get some of this riddle solved.
Thank you, Dennis. We appreciate it. Just want to remind callers we have about 13 more minutes. If you'd like to comment, go ahead and press *3, and that'll get you filtered into the speaker queue, and then we can speak with you live. We'd love to do so. In the meantime, I'm going to harass Rayanne here for a second and ask her how to explain how the ALP is a tool that guides development and leaks to FAA funding.
Oh, I get the hard ones. This is Rayanne again. Thanks, Karen. So the ALP links the development to the airport by identifying those key areas that need improvement and how FAA can, not really how they can fund them, but provides the avenue for FAA to fund them. They hate being put on the spot. You all get me very live and down to earth here. Without that, FAA can't justify, or it's hard for a state to justify to FAA what improvements need to be done and weight them against other airports as well. Phil, what else would you add to that?
It shows right away what the airport is to the agencies, what the airport's classified as, depending on what part of the set they're looking at. It'll look at the category and classification of the runway and airfield facilities, and we have spacing requirements. Not only we talked a lot about length today, but lateral spacing from one part of the facility to the next is very important, and it'll be important here at Unalaska to make sure, are we keeping those areas clear that must be cleared, runway safety areas, runway object-free areas, distances to fixed or movable objects or parked aircraft. Make sure that those are all kept clear for the critical design aircraft that will be identified as part of the study. And then once you've done that, you have that leftover area. It shows that this plan will show you what area is available for things like what we were talking earlier, potential hangars, areas for parking airline and aircraft that come up to the main ramp in front of the terminal. Where are we going to refuel aircraft? These types of things. So it's all there in a nice, pretty picture. As pretty as an engineering drawing can be, I guess.
Thank you, Phil. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
We are looking at 7:22. I just wanted to remind everybody on the phone or who's watching the live stream where our comment period is going through November 18th. There are various ways to comment, and I encourage you to visit our website at www.dot.alaska.gov/Unalaska. At the website, you will find project-related documents, a frequently asked questions sheet, a place where you can sign up for project email updates and stay apprised of the latest and greatest happenings with the project. You can submit emails and also text your comments. Text DUT plan to 73224. There's also a text telephone option, which is 907-770-8973. So please visit our website, engage us through that avenue. We need to hear from you. We want to hear from you. It's important that we receive your feedback. This meeting has been a great opportunity to do so. And as Mark mentioned, we'll be having another one in January of 2021. So with that being said, I'm going to hand it over to the DOT and Michael Baker, project managers, for some closing comments. Greg, I'll call on you first.
Okay, thanks, Karin. And thanks to everyone for joining and participating. It was great to see the participation that we got tonight. I know I certainly learned some things tonight, and that's the value that this process brings. You guys have the local knowledge, and we got the expertise, on this team, for airports, but we don't live there. So what you guys are giving us is exactly what we were looking for, and we just ask to keep comments coming to us, through the website, and we look forward to another public meeting with you guys and more opportunity to have this kind of participation. So thanks again, and I look forward to this process and working with you guys through it. So go ahead, Mark.
Thanks, Greg. And again, really appreciate everybody's participation tonight and the great questions. I knew that through this process we would have some really some challenging questions, but also some just really thoughtful questions. And what I also anticipated, and it definitely has proved out in this community, is how knowledgeable you are. Not just, as Greg said, of your community and the needs and the background around the airport, but really knowledgeable of aviation in general. Knowledge of the capabilities of your airport and of the aircraft that fly in and out of there. So it's made this dialogue, this meeting very enjoyable for me and certainly for our team. And as I think you've heard echoed from many of the folks on our team, we are all very excited to be conducting this study for you. And as Mike Thompson mentioned, this is going to be, ultimately, it is your study. It is the results will be based on the input that we get from the community, from the stakeholders, and so we really do covet your participation and the participation that Karin has already mentioned through the various ways, whether it's via telephone, whether it's text, whether it's email, or commenting directly on the website. We really do encourage you to be participants throughout this process. And as you are able to read the documents, the working papers that we are producing, that when you get to see and engage on the alternatives that we develop, again, we want to have your input because that will make this study that much more valuable. So again, thank you for your participation tonight, and Greg and Paul and Marie, thank you for your partnership in this. And so, Karin, back to you.
Thank you, Mark. Just one more thing I'd like to ask of you, if you could just restate the timeline going forward from here on out for the master plan update for the group, and then I'll close it out.
Okay. So, let's see if I can find it. Sorry. Thank you for putting me on the spot. So, going forward, our timeline is that we will have the facility requirements working paper completed at the end of this month, at the end of October 2020. And then we'll have the runway safety area and practicability study, as well as environmental overview, published the end of November 2020. Right after that, we go into our preliminary alternatives determination, and that will be published at the end of December 2020. As we also mentioned, there will be another public information meeting shortly after that those alternatives are developed and published. That will be on the 21st of January in 2021. Finally, we anticipate publishing an implementation plan and the ALP update at the end of March of 2021. And so, and then the final final ALP at the end of April. And then we will have our final report the end of May. And so, again, all of these will be ultimately located on the website for people to review and to comment on. And that will, as I mentioned before, will incorporate all of that and address those throughout the process. But many of those comments and many of those inputs will be incorporated in our final report in May.
Great, thanks, Mark. I appreciate it. Sorry for putting you on the spot there. Again, I'd just like to, in closing, I'd just like to thank everybody for participating this evening. Again, we want to hear from you. Our comment period for this public open house is through November 18th. Please visit our website at www.dot.alaska.gov/Unalaska. At the website, you can sign up for email updates and submit comments regarding the project. And with that, I will say good night and thanks for joining us.